Hello everyone, and welcome to the next installment of The Bare Minimum, Chronomancy with Crusty. Apologies for the gap in between videos. There was a pretty chunky balance patch released in between the last video and this one, which necessitated a big change in how you played Boonshare Chronomancer. I didn't want to release a new video without first mastering the new playstyle, so now that I'm comfortable with my miserable failure at mastering it, I'm here to bring you a few more tips, a few more raid-specific tips, to help start raising the bare minimum for your Boonshare Chronomancer performance in raids. Now, keeping in mind that these videos are not to teach the basic functions of a Chronomancer, I'll quickly go over the new one clone continuum split rotation. The concept is similar to the old one clone rotation, but due to the changes to the class, it feels quite different to execute. So let's look at this continuum split in depth and in slow motion. Like before, you start by summoning a clone, then weapon swap to proc the Sigil of Concentration buff. Next, you start casting Signet of Inspiration, then you enter continuum split mid-cast. I like to enter CS fairly early into the cast because of my ping, but mileage may vary for you depending on your ping and what you're comfortable with. Once you're in continuum split, place a Wall of Action, then use Tides of Time, which is Shield 5, and Mimic to finish your CS. Once out of CS, immediately Tides of Time again, and SOI again. Using Shield 5 again so quickly will enable you to catch the return wave twice, and thus reduce your cooldown by an additional 10 seconds. Meanwhile, using SOI again after CS will refresh the skill thanks to Mimic. You are then able to use Well of Action again, and then Mimic again for another 2 more SOI usages whenever you can guarantee that they will be boosted by the Sigil of Concentration buff. Mind you, this continuum split opener leaves very little room for error, especially on higher ping, so if you're having trouble executing it consistently, then you can just remove Shield 5 from the continuum split and use it only after you've gotten your core skills in, as you can see in the background here. So now let's move on to the encounters of Wing 2, and we start with Slothazor, the Gatekeeper of Salvation Pass. Slothazor is a boss where having a good chrono will make a huge difference to the success of the raid. They can handle or help mitigate some of the most dangerous mechanics that can down groups. The tips I will talk about boil down to these 3 things: focus pulls, mitigating fear, and mitigating coconuts or the shake. So to begin with, let's start with the focus pulls. I think most people are familiar with the concept of focus pulling at Slothazor for a Chronomancer. The fight spawns adds, called slublings, that fire dangerous projectiles at the group. Later in the fight, evolved slublings start to spawn, and they are even more dangerous. To help manage the slubling spawns, Chronomancers ought to use their focus to pull them towards the group, so that they can be cleaved down. But the tendency is to try and pull slublings directly into the middle of Slothazor's hitbox. However, Slothazor is rather large, and pulling into the middle of the hitbox isn't always ideal. You are often more effective pulling to the side of Slothazor, because your temporal curtain is able to pull slublings from further away. The next thing I'm going to talk about is mitigating the fear after every nap. At 80, 60, 40, 20, and 10%, Sloth will take a nap, making it invulnerable, and you'll need to CC its break bar in order to wake it up and continue the fight. After waking up, Sloth will roar and induce fear over the entire squad. This needs to be mitigated to prevent the team from haplessly running into the poisoned arena and dying. A lot of pug groups will get druids to bring the Protect Me utility skill to stun break that fear. However, if your druid is out of position, if you're running non-druid healers, or running a single druid healer comp, then Chronos have a variety of ways to handle the mechanic. The simplest method is to bring Heal Mantra and take advantage of the Mender's Purity trait in Inspiration. With it, you can cleanse the fear immediately after the roar, provided your allies don't have any other conditions on them. But the way I've been demonstrating in the background is giving my team Aegis to block the fears instead. The easiest and most consistent way of doing this is to bring the Signet of Ether Heal and timing its usage so that you leverage the Inspiring Distortion trait, also an inspiration, to give your group Aegis and block the fear. The last thing I want to talk about for Sloth is the Shake or Coconuts attack. Starting at 50%, Slothazor will plant its feet on the ground and begin to shake like a wet dog. Projectile spores of Condi Death will then launch from Sloth and target everyone in the raid. These spores cannot be mitigated by projectile reflection, destruction, or absorption skills. It's possible to block an invuln through this attack, so the preferred method is allowing the Chrono to get inside the center of Sloth's hitbox and body block the arcing projectiles while self-distorting to avoid getting blown up by all the conditions. You can simply use the Distort Shatter for this attack, as Sloth does the attack every 45 seconds after the initial 50%, giving enough time for the Shatter to come off cooldown. Now we move on to the Bandit Trio, which is more of an event than a boss. I won't spend too long on this, as I feel that there isn't too much to learn for a Chronomancer. I'll talk about two things quite quickly. The first thing is focus pulling on the bridge, and the second will be the triple bandit CC if you're on mortar duty. So focus pulls on the bridge is pretty straightforward. At the start of the encounter, there will be 3 bandits spaced out on the bridge. If you lay your temporal curtain directly down on the bandit in the middle, you can pull all 3 together for cleave. This also comes in handy if you are allocated to mortar duty and want to clean up bandits coming back from the mortars later on. The other thing I want to talk about is mortar duty, specifically how to quickly CC the 3 bandits before they can build their mortars. If you stand next to the bandit in the middle and aim your Tides of Time, which is shield 5, at one of the other bandits through the one in the middle, then you can hit both of them with the one skill. This leaves the last bandit to be handled by a quick clone, an F3 shatter combo, or, if you're lazy like me, a gravity well. Finally, we meet Matthias, the master of the Temple of Salvation, and the final boss of Salvation Pass. Matthias is a boss that heavily relies a lot on personal responsibility to get through the fight. It's also fairly heal intensive because a lot of groups eat quite a lot of damage, so the carry potential of a Chrono doing well with the mechanics might not be as obvious as, say, a fight like Slothazor, but there are still things Chronos can do to improve their performance for the benefit of their raid team. The first thing I'm going to talk about is called Fixation Bait. One of the lesser known aspects about the Matthias fight is that the fixation target is chosen pre-pull. Before every pull, the first person to start scaling the stairs up to Matthias becomes the primary target for fixation. If you down, then Matthias will pick another target, the second person scaling the stairs, and so on and so forth. However, knowing this, you can play a little bit differently and act as a bit of a kiter to prevent the oppressive gaze, which is the Hadouken attack, from blowing up the stack. That doesn't mean that you play off the stack the whole time. I mean, you still want to be with the group for the overwhelming majority of the fight. Just move off when you know oppressive gaze is about to happen, and you can prevent your team from downing to it fairly consistently. The next thing I want to talk about is well placement. Due to not needing Well of Recall anymore, it's not as big of a deal as it used to be, but it's still important for Chronomancers to place your wells properly. Now, there are a lot of mechanics that force people to spread out, and Matthias in general is a boss that moves around a lot due to how the aggro mechanics work, so you have to be smart with how you lay down your wells. We went over how wells worked in the last video, and a link will be in the description. But in general, you want to place wells down where you know people will stack when they pop. If Matthias is off in no man's land, but you know that the team is going to try and come back to the center of the arena, then place your wells where you know where they will be, not where they are currently, because you'll just waste them that way. The final tip I'm going to talk about is very situational. In my footage it wasn't even necessary, but I want to stress that CCing the sacrifice is of utmost importance as a mechanic. Therefore, it's completely fine to burn your mower outside of Continuum Split. A lot of people have the tendency to save mower for a Continuum Split, or hold off on using Continuum Split until a sacrifice comes up. Now, if you can get your cooldowns to line up fairly well, then there's nothing wrong with delaying for a few seconds so that you can use your CS for a sacrifice, that's fine. But altering your whole rotation to the extent that you never CS outside of the sacrifice is a bad idea. Matthias is the kind of fight where it's sometimes difficult to nail your boon share, and hamstringing your boon share capabilities only extends the fight further. If you are concerned about CC, then bring a pistol offhand with a sigil of paralysation. You don't get much value out of using a focus or sword offhand at Matthias. Chronomancers have some of the most comprehensive CC options in the game, and there is no reason not to have an F3 Shatter and a pistol 5, and sometimes a shield 5, up for every sacrifice, which should do a huge amount of breakbar damage. So you shouldn't have to worry too much about burning a Moa outside of CS if necessary, because you have very strong backup CC options that will be available for every sacrifice. So there we have it, just a few things for Chronomancers to juggle in Wing 2, as hopefully they look to improve and raise their standard of the bare minimum. I just want to thank everyone for watching and waiting, and say that hopefully part 3 will come out sooner than part 2 did. If you enjoyed the content, then feel free to like and subscribe. I also stream occasionally on Twitch. Quite Crusty is my handle there. I mostly play Guild Wars 2, though I play other games every once in a while. But when I do play Guild Wars 2, I will play Chrono the majority of the time, and I'm quite happy to explain my thought process as I play. And I'm also happy to give on-the-fly tips if that interests anybody. Again, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you around for the next video.